Hello, welcome to Lessons of Vietnam. Today is July 23rd, 2014, just in case you're watching this later on archives. My name is Bill Dixon with North Carolina Vietnam Veterans Incorporated. My co-host, Mr. Bob Matthews, is off tonight, but we do have a special guest. Bob will be back with us, but tonight we have Joe Harsch. Joe had an interesting job in Vietnam. We're going to talk a little bit about it in just a minute, but want to bring you up to date. If you're watching this live, then you know we have changed our time from 8 to 9 instead of 7 to 8. So if you're watching this and want to catch the show later, next show, it'll be from 8 to 9. Our next show is August 13th. Show after that's August 27th. And our monthly POW ceremony will be September 6th. We do the POW MIA ceremony at the Raleigh Capitol for the last 27 years. And our guest at that ceremony, reading the names, will be the Order of the Purple Hearts. They will be doing their yearly August reading of the names. If you get a chance, call us at 919-518-9773. Ask Joe some questions about his job in Vietnam and Vietnam altogether. We just came back from Wilson, July 12th. We were in Wilson. We had our 1/8 inch replica, 1/8 inch. Well, it is 1/8 replica of the Vietnam Wall, which still takes up a lot of space with the computers and printout. We had great response from people there. I was just telling everybody we had one man we pulled up the bio on that was standing beside the man when he got shot, which would leave lots of sleepless nights. We're also been asked to go to Caldwell County and do our educational thing where we teach teachers how to teach the lessons of Vietnam. We're also currently working on Wilson County and Johnson County about getting the course in. And we go to Boston in November to speak to the National Social Studies Conference there, where we'll be teaching teachers how to teach lessons of Vietnam full curriculum course and be backup for them with information and so forth and for them to do. But our guest tonight was Mr. Joe Harsch. He is a member of North Carolina Vietnam Veterans Incorporated. A close friend of mine. We've shared rooms together quite a few times, and his wife and my wife and us share an anniversary. He is also he should have been a Marine because his birthday is the Marine Corps birthday, but he wasn't. He was in the Army. And Joe, let's talk a little bit about where you're from and what you did before you went into Uncle Sam's Army.
Well, I grew up in a little town called Catasauqua, Pennsylvania. It's a town of about 7,000 people. And actually, I was drafted. But after the day I got my draft notice, I went over to my recruiter and said, what do I do to get out of the draft? And he says, you can take a third year in the Army, and I can guarantee you a school. So I went off to testing and all, and I scored high in electronics. So I got selected for a radar school. So I went in the Army, went to basic training at Fort Bragg, and that was interesting for me. It was June, July, and August, and in Pennsylvania, it don't get up to 90, 95 degrees every day. So basic training was kind of tough. And I thought the Army inputted those little sandflies just to irritate us Yankees when we came down here.
The sand fleas and the sand spurs. Yes.
Yeah, that was the interesting part.
I'm from North Carolina, and when I went through basic at Fort Bragg, I swore there was places at Fort Bragg that was not on the face of the earth, like Moon, up in them sand hills.
Yeah, and we had all airborne sergeants in charge of DIs in charge of us, so we walked everywhere we went. We never rode to anything. And some of the rifle ranges were 5-6 miles from our basic training from our company. So we ran a lot and everything, and I was in real good shape when I came out. And then from there, I went to my AIT training.
Well, before we go any further, let's go back to Pennsylvania. How long were you out of high school before you got your greetings letter?
1 year.
1 year out of high school?
Yeah. And 1968 was the biggest draft since World War II. So the criteria for the draft was that if you could fog a mirror and cast a shadow, you were in. So there was no criteria to the draft. So
now, during that year, were you just kind of laying around taking it easy, or
yeah.
were you working, or?
I was working. I had multiple scholarships to play football, but I didn't want any part of school, which my father was very close to me, but he still didn't talk to me for 2 weeks when he found out I turned down all the scholarships. But I was working. I was a tree surgeon. I was working for a tree company, and it was you see the trucks here. They're still in business. Asplund Tree Company, and I was working for them when I got drafted. And say something good about Asplund. I even got a Christmas bonus check when I was in Vietnam.
Dude, that's pretty good. I got a bill for my taxes for combat pay from North Carolina when I was in Vietnam. So, okay, now you've got out of basic. You're a well-trained killer right now, going right out of basic. And now where did you go?
I went to a small fort down in New Jersey called Fort Monmouth, which was actually the headquarters for the Signal Corps at that time. And I went to a air traffic control area, and we did the GCA radar. I was a radar technician.
And what's a GCA?
All right, GCA radar is to land aircraft in basically foul weather or at night, to where you put the location of the aircraft on a line that is parallel to the center point of the runway, and also a perpendicular to the flight path, and that's how you land them through radar. Okay. So it's basically the pilot following the radar into the area, and so we can land in any kind of weather.
Now, were you responsible for installing those, running them, or?
I was trained to be a technician, to install and to repair.
Okay. Now, did you leave from straight there for Vietnam? Or did you have a stateside assignment, or?
Well, tell you the truth, we were all trying to figure our ways how to stay stateside without going to Vietnam, because it was about a 95% rate for our MOS to go to Vietnam. So I went to an NCO academy, non-commissioned officer academy, which was 16 weeks. And the first 6 weeks we were out in the swamps of New Jersey.
New Jersey's got swamps?
Oh, yeah. New Jersey's got some good swamps. Okay. And we were out there basically learning how to survive in there and survival training and all. And then 6 weeks at the post, teaching how to set up an electric compound like they have in Vietnam. And in 6 weeks we were OTC, learning how to be a non-commissioned officer. Which what I did is I was teaching electronics.
Okay, like a shake and bake. You became a shake and bake.
That's what they called it, shake and bake.
Shake and bake. Okay. So you come out as a sergeant something?
We came out as an E5 specialist.
E5 specialist. Okay. All right. Now, when you come out of that school, learn how to be a non-commissioned officer, what did they do with you then?
Well, we went to Vietnam. They shipped us to Vietnam. If you went to the NCO Academy, it was a 99+% that you were going to Vietnam.
Now, so when you said we, did you go with other guys from the NCO Academy?
Well, basically yes, but there was different times and different flights. So you basically go to Vietnam by yourself. I didn't know anybody else on my airplane when I went.
Okay.
So, but the class graduated, but there was different times. Some guys got a week off. Some guys took their 30-day leaves. So, it was different times. So when I left California, I knew nobody on my airplane.
Now let's go back to, now you got orders to Vietnam. What did you know about Vietnam and what did you think about it?
Nothing. I knew nothing about Vietnam. In fact, I didn't even know where it was. I went to the library and looked up Vietnam, and they didn't have anything because it was called Indochina at that time. So Vietnam wasn't listed, but basically I figured out where it was. So we went. I knew nothing about Vietnam. Politically, I knew nothing. Coming from a small town, we weren't very political about it. All I knew is that I was sending me to some place that basically I'd get killed, but I can't vote for the president. And being 19 years old, I couldn't drink legally in Pennsylvania.
Okay. Now, you flew over on commercial airlines?
Yeah, we flew over on Braniff International.
Okay.
Going over.
The multicolor airplanes. Yeah.
Great looking waitresses,
Yes.
or stewardesses. Great
okay.
looking.
Well, coming back, almost any stewardess will look good. But,
no, this is going over.
Yeah. Now, where did you land?
We landed at Benoit.
Benoit Air Base. Okay.
But going over, we left Travis Air Force Base, flew to Hawaii, went from Hawaii to Guam, from Guam to, what was the other one? I think the Philippines.
Okinawa?
Yeah, Okinawa. We flew into Okinawa, and from Okinawa into Vietnam. So we kind of puddle jumped our way across the Pacific.
Yeah.
And it was 24 hours it took us to get over there.
All right. When the plane when the pilot says we're getting ready to land, what were your feelings then?
Well, we looked outside the airplane, and there was all kinds of flares going off and everything else, and we all sat there and thought, "Wow, are we going to die quickly?" Because we didn't know what it was like. You fly to the United States, I mean, you see lights from cities, but you don't see flares and tracers going off.
And you basically had no weapons or anything, just primarily wearing khakis?
We had jungle fatigues that we were issued.
Oh, you already had them.
We had jungle fatigues. This was in December '69. We had jungle fatigues and our bag, and that was it. We had no idea what was going on. And when you landed and you stepped off the airplane, the heat hit you first. Now, you got to understand, this is like I left the United States in December 10th. And December 10th in Pennsylvania is about 30 degrees, 32 degrees. Mm-hmm. And I get off in Vietnam, and it's like 95 degrees. And an awful smell of diesel fuel. And we tried to figure out where that was coming from. And we learned later on where it was coming from.
All right, so then you probably went through a place called 90 Replacement?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And what we did, we checked in, and the drill instructor there just told us, he said, "Sergeant, says, go find you a bunk somewhere in one of the barracks, one of the 4 barracks." So we walked outside, and I looked around. There was only 3 barracks. And I said to the sergeant, I said, "Hey, where's the 4th barracks at?" He says, "Oh, yeah, that got blown up last night in a rocket attack." So that made me get a real funny, warm, fuzzy feeling about I'm going to be next door to a place that was just blown up. How much luck do I have?
And they gave you all your equipment right there, and they showed you where the bunkers were. And
no, they didn't give us anything.
Okay.
They gave us our orders to where we were going. And I stayed 2 days at the 90th Replacement. And then the 3rd day, they flew me up north to a place called Phu Hep, okay, which is about halfway up the country, just north of,
Is that in Tucor?
Yeah, it was right on the coast. And when I got there, they said, "What's my MOS?" And I told my MOS, and they says, "Wait a minute, the Air Force runs GCA up here." So they basically didn't have a job for me. So they put me behind a desk in personnel, which I knew nothing about. And occasionally during the day, somebody would say, "Sign here," and I'd sign my name to it, not even reading what it was. And one day the guy walked in and says, "Here, it said orders for you." And I said, "Where do I sign?" He said, "You don't have to sign, these are yours." So I said, "Okay." So they were flying me down south to Long Binh, which at the time was the biggest supply depot in the world. and they had better than 200,000 troops at Long Binh. And so they flew me down there, went to a company, they bussed me over to a company, and I met the first sergeant. The first sergeant says, "Well, we're glad to see you." And I says, "Why?" He said, "Well, we need NCOs." I says, "What do you need NCOs for?" He says, "Well, a lot of ours got killed." And I thought, "Oh, thanks a lot. Welcome home." I says, "Well, where's the airfield?" He says, "You don't need an airfield." He said, "You're going to be the squad leader of a LRRP unit." So I was at a 1st Aviation Brigade, 165th Ranger Unit, 1st LRRP platoon, 1st LRRP platoon. And I knew nothing about being a LRRP. Luckily, my guy that was going to replace me, it was his second tour.
Well, right there, let's talk about what a LRRP is. We got people that are watching that probably never heard that word. Tell us all about what a LRRP does, and then we'll get into what you did and so forth. But tell us a little bit about who a LRRP is, what he does, and
a LRRP, it stands for Long Range Recon Patrol. That means that you're dropped into the jungle, usually at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. You set up a position, you find your location. Our basic job was to find the enemy and figure out where they were going and what they were going to do. And you could tell that by what they were carrying. If it was a lot of rice, they were just going to replace supplies to a line unit, or if it was a lot of armament and weapons, and they were going to probably attack a military base, either ours or Vietnamese, South Vietnamese. But what we did, we couldn't break radio silence. We had to stay covert as much as we possibly could. I went out with 7 guys. There's only 7 guys could go out because my gear weighed 95 pounds because I had to basically live off my body when I was out there. So when you get a helicopter can only carry 8 combat troops in a helicopter. So we only took 7 because we weighed so much. We had so much gear. So with only 7 guys, you don't carry a lot of firepower, so you don't pick on big people. And once I broke radio silence with their triangulation of radio over there, the Vietnamese had the same as us, that they could pinpot our position, so we had to be extracted immediately once we broke radio silence.
So your basic was to hide someplace and watch and hope they didn't find you before you found them.
There were times where, obviously, the North Vietnamese had LRRP units too. There was twice where we bumped into their LRRP unit. We had a heck of a firefight.
What's the average mission for a LRRP group?
Our shortest mission was 1 day. Our longest mission was almost 6 weeks, and that we did the recon for the Cambodian invasion, May of '70.
We'll go more on that one a little bit later. All right, you're now all of a sudden become a LRRP. How did you get your training to become a LRRP?
OJT.
OJT. Okay.
There was a lot of that in Vietnam. In fact, a funny story is today's a funny story. When he issued me an M16, I had to ask a guy how to break it down so I could clean it, because the only time I touched an M16 was in basic training. I fired 5 rounds with it, and that was it. Never showed us how to break it down, how to clean it, or anything else. We carried M14s in the States. So when I got to Vietnam, I said, somebody's got to show me how to break this thing down and what its functions are. So it's funny today, but it wasn't funny that day.
So when you were there, now where were you stationed at as a LRRP? You were stationed at Long Binh.
Yes.
Long Binh was a little different than some of the base camps or artillery bases and so forth. The forward reserve base. You stayed in a barracks there.
We had hooches.
Okay.
And what we did, our hooches were quartered off, so there was 2 guys per quarter that would stay in that hooch. The hooch was made out of wood, obviously. It would go up to about mid-chest of wood, and the rest was screening, and that was your air conditioning. So the cooler it got is how fast the wind was blowing. But also the dirt was blowing that way too.
Tin roof?
Tin roof, yeah.
Okay. And outside they have barrels filled with sand
we had sandbagged barrels. Yeah, we had barrels filled with sand, and our bunker was right next to it. Our bunker was pretty good. We had a bunker that went down about 8 feet below ground level, and on top of us we had a layer of railroad ties, a layer of sandbags, a layer of PSP. Then again, we had 4 layers as like that on top of us, so we could probably take a direct hit with a rocket and survive on it.
Well, remembering how Long Bend was, you had to either be trucked out or fly out of Long Bend to get out there to where the bad guys were. How did they flew you out on a helicopter usually?
Right. We flew from Long Bend. All depends where we were going. They would fly us to either to the mission site where we were, which was highly confidential, or they would fly us to another unit that we could fly from there to the mission site. Or a lot of times we flew out of Cu Chi, which is 25th Division. We would drive the Cu Chi and fly out of Cu Chi to mission site.
If you'd known better, you could have taken the tunnels.
Yeah, that was another funny story. Is every time I was at Cu Chi, they'd always have sappers in the wire. And I thought, boy, this 25th Division's a really crappy unit because they have sappers all the time. Well, I didn't know anything about the tunnels. The tunnels actually ran inside of Cu Chi. It ran under the outside wire. And I didn't know it, and obviously they didn't know it either. They didn't find out till almost the end of the war as the tunnels were there.
All right, now, you were stationed at Long Bend, but you, as a LRRP, you covered probably most of the country?
I did operations in all 4 corps.
All 4, okay. All right, and Vietnam was divided up into 4 different areas. I Corps, which was up right at the DMZ. 2 corps were Central Highlands. 3 corps was around Saigon in the Delta. Then you had Rung Sat Zone, which was really swampy, Delta, Ocean, 4 corps. So that's how the corps, what the areas were pulled up. The Marines were mostly up in I Corps,
right,
pretty much. And everybody, the Army and everybody else was in the rest of them. The Marines originally started out, some of them, I think, in 4 corps, which would make more sense because it was more water and swamps and so forth there. All right, we're in country. You're now a highly trained LRRP. Tell us about some of the missions you went on. Let me ask you, you and I have talked in the past, and the Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese communists were supported by Chinese and Russians as far as equipment and also advisors.
Right.
Did you ever see any of those advisors?
Yeah, I had. To this day, I regret what I did. We were up around the A Shaw Valley area, okay, and we had the high ground so I could see down into the A Shaw. And the North Vietnamese used to like to use the A Shaw as a supply route because the Americans didn't want to go into the A Shaw. The A Shaw was a nasty place. Well, I got my field glasses on and I see a 6'4", white, blonde-haired soldier with a brown uniform on and a brown beret. Uh-oh. It's Russian Special Forces. I had maybe a 300-meter shot at him. I wanted to take him down so bad, but we weren't allowed to shoot advisors. Détente.
Oh.
So we couldn't, unless they were be killed in a firefight, you could not sniper fire.
Well, if you just shot him, it would probably start a firefight.
Well, thinking that way, but somebody would have turned me in. Nobody was there, but somebody would have turned me in.
Yeah, the rules of engagement in Vietnam were pretty strange. Not as strange as the kids have to go through today, I don't think, but what you could shoot and what you couldn't shoot was always so interesting. as far as
It was basically the same. That's why our lessons of Vietnam, that the kids today don't realize how close it was, especially to the early part of the Vietnam War, because you had the active where Viet Cong was still active. Viet Cong was very active up until '68, when we virtually wiped out the Viet Cong up at Way City. So it was the same thing when I was over there. Is that I had more NVA they had uniforms. You could tell the NVA different. Very little Viet Cong when I was there in '70. So we didn't have the problem. But the kids today have the same problem in Iraq, and they had it in Afghanistan. Because you don't know if the guy's a farmer or a terrorist. They have no uniforms.
You know, for a long time, it's talking about the rules of engagement. The Americans were not allowed, of course, the Americans were not allowed to go into North Vietnam. We were not allowed to go into Laos or Cambodia, and officially. And the North Vietnamese put the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which was not one trail, it was a bunch of trails, but it was kind of the Ho Chi Minh network, bringing people in through Cambodia and Laos almost unstopped for a while there. And I understand you had something to do with the first Americans officially going into Laos or Cambodia.
Yeah, I went into Laos. I went in about 3 miles and laid for 3 days along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And I was counting trucks, basically. I was counting trucks to see what was going down the trail and at what time and what they were carrying, or try to see what they were carrying. And that was kind of interesting. Where I looked like one of those Japanese guys during World War II in the Philippines. They all had all kinds of camouflage on. That's what I looked like. And I would just lay there counting trucks, and it was real interesting.
What if you were out on patrol like that? You just found a place and a quiet place to hide in the bushes. You just laid there all day, pretty much. Or?
Well, it depends where you were going. First of all, we never went down main trails. We would go through the bush because we knew that the North Vietnamese were on the main trails. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to lay where we could observe. And sometimes when we figured out, see, they if there's a large unit going, they usually have basically almost a squad as point man for the large unit. So once we see the point men, we would set up our position there, and that would be laying beside and just observing.
When we say point men, that's the group who's out in front of the big group. So the idea of the point men or the group out in front, rather than the whole large group walking into an ambush or something.
Right.
The point men are supposed to spring in the ambush or see any ambush before the whole the officers, commanders, and the rest of the main body of troops can be seen. Is that
correct? It's exactly right. Point usually when you got a smaller unit like a company, you have one guy walking point, or a company and smaller. But when you have more than a company moving, like a division or a regiment moving, then you have almost a platoon as point men to go out there, hoping that they would spring an ambush prior to going in. That was you hated to be point man, to tell you the truth, because you were, if the enemy opened up, they'd open up on you.
Yeah. Well, I remember that when it got dark. There weren't a whole lot of street lights out there in the jungles. What did you do at night, and how did you fix your dinner, and how did you take care of when nature says it's time to take care of nature? And tell us a little bit about the nighttime.
Let's talk about dinner first.
All right.
You would eat out of a can, out of sea ration cans. You'd open it with a what's this little thing?
P-38?
P-38s. I hated P-38s. I couldn't stand them. I used to open most of my cans with my K-bar knife. K-bar knife is the stuff that Rambo used to carry, that knife that Rambo carried, which you would have taped to one of your suspenders. This
is a P-38, what it looks like, and it's really a great can opener. This is for senior citizens. It's a little bit bigger than the one I carried. I still have the one I carried in Vietnam. This one's a little bit bigger, so you can get a better cook to it. But this is what a P-38 looks for. and it's probably one of the best tools that the military ever came out with.
That size, yeah, but the ones we had were smaller and they were hard to use. Yeah. So I didn't use the P38, but we eat out of cans. And if we were in an area where we could, basically before the sun would set and we set up our night position, we would heat our food with C4. Mm-hmm. Take a pinch of C4 and just put it under the can. You light the thing and it would go poof. And that can was too hot to handle.
Now, C4 was an explosive.
Yes,
you used the C4 to blow things up.
Plastic explosives, yes.
Okay. Kind of like clay?
Yep. It was like Play-Doh.
Play-Doh,
it's just like Play-Doh.
Except it went bang.
Yeah. Play-Doh don't blow up. Okay. But it was one thing about guys in combat is you adapt to any situation you have to. And that was us adapting. We heat our food with C4. Was it recommended? No, it wasn't recommended, but that's what we do. And then at night, I could see a cigarette probably a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile away if there was no objects. It was that dark. And so if you wanted to smoke, you had to smoke under your poncho. You pull your poncho cover over your head and you'd smoke under there.
Did y'all have night vision goggles?
No. We had starlight scopes.
Okay.
And a starlight scope was probably good from me to you. They weren't very good. Starlight scopes weren't very good. The slightest light inside, when you took the cover off the starlight scope, the slightest light that would get in there would ruin the filter completely. And very seldom I carried one. So the night goggles today is a great improvement. I hope Vietnam taught whoever invented the night goggles that showed them, because starlight scopes, they sucked.
I had a guy one time tell me you could hear your eyelashes blink. When you blink, you could hear your eyelashes.
Oh yeah.
Out there, because between the mosquitoes and the leeches and all the other creepy crawlers they had in Vietnam jungles, and you just had to lay down and be real quiet.
Right. You could. Yeah, you're right. I could. A rabbit would wake up everybody. I mean, and they're not noisy animals.
Now, let's just say that the bad guys kind of stumbled on you. How fast? Well, you're gonna have to. You're in the middle of a firefight, but generally with just 7 guys, you're not gonna have a whole lot of firefight. You had to kind of get out of there. Was they pretty quick picking you up, or you had to beat it out by foot? Or?
Well, you would basically get out there by foot to an area. You would call in for extraction. You would give coordinates of the extraction area, which normally wasn't where you were at that time. Yeah. So you'd have to move to that area to get extracted out.
Was that set up before nightfall? Or?
No, it didn't have to be. We didn't know where we were by the time we wanted to get extracted. We had an area. We were basically locked into a 4-click. A click is about a mile. Okay. And it was 4 blocks. And that was an area that I could call in to that area, and the helicopter pilot knew where we were. But we'd still have to pop smoke to when he came down. And you'd be surprised, you can see smoke at night.
Huh, okay. So, let's go back to your incursion into Cambodia. You were out there, how many weeks?
I was in Cambodia for 2 weeks. They dropped us
okay.
in right next to the river. There was a river that segregated. I want to say it was the Mekong, but I'm not sure. I'm not really sure what river it was.
Now you're out there for 2 weeks watching, so nobody can watch you is the idea.
Yeah.
So you carried 2 weeks of water and 2 weeks of food with you when you went?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
But we reconned in 12.6 miles from the border, from the river. We reconned in 12.6 miles. Okay. And then that took us 2 weeks. And then when the push started, we moved back to the river where they set up the LZ for extracting stuff out. And we pulled a ton of stuff out of Cambodia.
All right, let's go back to what we talked about a little bit a while ago. You're out there, and the idea is to see and not be seen. And all of a sudden, those Hammond linemen kind of started talking to you, and you had to go take care of some personal business. And
where'd I go?
Yeah, I mean,
You
Not
don't.
not a whole lot of outhouses out there.
No, there's no outhouses out there. What you do is you dig a hole in the ground and you plop down on top of it, and hopefully you got toilet paper. If you don't have toilet paper, you're hopefully there's some soft leaves around where you can use. But that's basically what you did, and then you had to cover it up because the Vietnamese would find that they knew that Americans were there, so it wasn't. It was stuff that an American kid, 19 years old, never thought about doing. I wouldn't go out in my backyard in Catasauqua and dig a hole and go in the backyard. So, you had to learn. You had to learn the tricks of the trade, and you had to do it.
Okay, you're out there in Cambodia for 2 weeks. What'd you do for a shower?
Didn't have any. We didn't have any showers. There was no water. The only water we had was for drinking purposes, and we carried the iodine tablets, halogen tablets. We carried them. We could find, supposedly, you could find some water that was fairly clean that you could use your halogen tablets. Once the push started, they drew us back to the river, and they would fly in what they call blivets, which was a big rubber balloon that would be slung low under a helicopter. Well, when the helicopter was full of water, when the helicopter would fly in, the North Vietnamese would see them, and they'd take pop shots at them, and usually put holes in the blivets. And so when it came down, it wasn't full.
We have a caller. Caller? Hello, thank you for calling.
Harsch.
Hello.
Hello?
Yes, come on back. Come on and talk to us. Speak up a little bit. Can hardly hear you.
I have a question for Joe Harsch.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Turn down your radio. Turn off
Okay.
the radio. Turn down
Your computer. Check the sound on your computer.
turn down the volume on the web page.
Mr. Harsch.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Joe, you talked about your year in Vietnam, and how hard is it to take what you did there years ago and explain it to the kids in the classroom today? How much do they actually get, and how hard is it?
I'll tell you, it's not that hard to do because there's a lot on your shoulders that you want to get off. And I got that off my shoulders years ago by talking to kids in classes. So it's a lot easier today. What the kids get out of it is that war stinks. It's not a fun place to be. It's not John Wayne type. It's not let's turn off the cameras and everybody gets up. So the kids learn that war is not fun, although it is needed around the world, but it's not fun. And what an American boy, and that's what we all were, we're all boys, what American boys had to do to keep the freedom of this country is amazing. And I think the kids picked that up.
Any more comments, Mr. Caller? We seem to have lost it there. What that was referenced to is lessons of North Carolina Vietnam veterans travel all over the country, teaching teachers how to teach the course of lessons of Vietnam. And we go into, we speak anywhere from 1 or 2 people to a couple thousand people at a time. And sometimes some of the questions the kids ask are interesting, but that generally the kids do have a genuine interest, seem to be. They enjoy listening and talking to and meeting live history and the stories that they take for granted, like going 2 weeks without taking a bath or a shower. That always gets them, having to dig a hole and sit in a hole, that sort of stuff.
Actually, Bill, it was 6 weeks till I got a shower.
6 weeks without a shower.
It took me 4 weeks to get out of Cambodia. We were already in 2.
And they probably smelled you 2 weeks after you left.
They say, and I believe it, is that you stink when you can smell yourself. And I couldn't stand myself at that time. My uniform was actually rotted. I took it off like a clown would take a clown suit off, just pull it, and it just ripped apart. My boots, the next day, I went to put my boots on, and I put my foot in my boot, and the sole just came right out of the boot. That they were rotted.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And when I got back to the base camp, and Mama San thought we were all dead because she hadn't seen us for 6 weeks.
You said base camp. Was that back to Long Bend?
Long Bend. I was back to Long Bend.
So at places like Long Bend, each building or hooch had one or two Vietnamese women we call Mama San, who took care of the laundry and kept it clean and made your bed and that sort of stuff.
And it cost us a ton. It cost us $9 a month for her.
Yeah.
That was big money.
And so when she always thought you were gone. You were
oh
dead,
yeah,
so she sold all your soap and
all my underwear and soap and everything else was gone because she thought I was dead. Well, when we got back, I took a list of guys and went down to the PX and went into the PX and bought stuff. When we got back to the area to go take a shower, we had our regular soap. Now we used soap that was non scented. It was unscented soap that we used. Well, we found out it wouldn't lather. We couldn't get it to lather because we were so dirty that I took the GI soap. It's like lava. It's like sand. And I had to take the first layer off with that before I could get my regular soap to lather. That's how dirty we were. And again, going back to our callers' message, I think the kids pick this up, and they can't refer to it, but they pick it up and say, "Geez, this guy, he went through a lot at a young age, at 19, 20 years old." They're sitting there, they're usually 17, 18 years old, and that could be them in the near future. So it picks it up, and you'll find, one thing I got to say about veterans is that we all have a different respect for the American flag. And it's not just a piece of cloth to us, guys. It means something. And I think the kids pick that up, and they have a lot more respect for the American flag.
Well, I think a lot of the kids, as we're going to class, patriotism is just a word until they see someone who has been through what the Vietnam veteran has been through, and you're sitting there relating to them to some of the things that you did and so forth. So I think that's where it would pick up is patriotism and the flag and so forth. And it's not kind of a prissy thing, but it's these guys went through some stuff for this country and so forth. And thinking about Long Bend, it was a large base with a lot of guys, and most people at Long Bend wore spit-shine boots and freshly starched uniforms every day. And you got these guys coming in who hadn't had a bath in almost 2 months and dirty and so forth. And you probably stirred a lot of attention when you came back.
Well, the funny story was I went to the PX, and there was a light colonel and a master sergeant outside the PX. And my buddy and I went down there, and we were going to go in. And he says, "Wait a minute, you can't go in here." And I says, "What do you mean I can't go in?" He says, "You're too dirty. You smell too bad." And I said, "Well," I tried to explain to him where we were and what we were doing. He says, "No difference. Just go clean up first." I said, "I can't go clean up because I don't have any soap or anything, which I'm down here for." And he says, "No, you can't go in." I says, "Well, my commanding officer was a brigadier general." So I gave him the phone number, and there was a phone right there. Gave this colonel a phone number, and he dials it up. And my general had the presence, I guess the guts, to answer his own phone. And he answered the phone. He says, General Harris here. General Harrison. And the colonel says, "I got 2 guys down here, da-da-da-da-da." Well, he says, he called them a bunch of names. And I could hear him. I was standing maybe 2 feet away from the colonel. And I could hear my general yelling over the phone at this guy and just dressing him down totally. He says, "Yes, General," and hung up the phone. He says, "Go ahead in, gentlemen." So it takes, when you got a commander like that's a good guy to have.
I know Long Bend was a totally different world than the rest of Vietnam in itself. And so when did you come home?
I had to extend. The Army had a deal that if you had 5 months or less left in your tour of duty with the Army, they would discharge you when you came home. So what I had at my DROS time, my time I was supposed to go home, was 6 months. 6 months and 3 days. Well, in 1970, they came down with what they called Project Santa Claus, to where they extended that 5-month thing to 6 months, to where you can go home at 6 months and get discharged out of the Army. So I had to extend for 3 days in Vietnam. So that was December 13th I came home. No, December 10th I came home.
Before you came home, you were out there, you're LRRP, you were in kind of a dangerous situation and so forth. When did you quit being a LRRP and stay back at Long Binh?
2 weeks before my term was to go home, I hid for 2 weeks. Nobody could find me. I would get up in the morning, I'd go have breakfast, and I'd go away. And I'd be at the pool or someplace else where they couldn't find me.
The pool.
Yeah, the one you built.
Okay. I was going to say, when I left there wasn't no pool. But,
Yeah.
there was a golf course. And right next door, and I have pictures of the Chinese restaurant while it was under construction.
Loon Phones.
Loon Phone's Chinese restaurant was under construction on Long Binh, right next to the miniature golf course. As you can see, Long Binh was a little interesting place. My colonel had his own fully lit tennis court next to his trailer. So,
obviously, the enlisted men couldn't see that stuff. But
a little bit different. All right, now you when did you come back? Was it in the latter part of December? Or no,
yeah, it was December 10th I left Vietnam. I flew into Oakland Army Depot.
Okay.
And got discharged there. Now, what was interesting about that is that we got to the Army Depot about 5 or 6 in the afternoon, and they were having an IG inspection.
Now, what's
day.
an IG inspection?
General inspection. It was probably the biggest inspection a unit can have, to where they'll come in and they'll make sure you got all the equipment you're issued, make sure you have all the area space you have, the cleanliness of it, paperwork. I mean, the whole 9 yards.
Kind of show and tell for the big guys.
It's a general inspection, what's called.
So if you're short some equipment, you go steal it from somebody else.
Oh yeah.
So you'd have it, and
if you have something on the books that, or something you have that's not on the books, you got to go find it somewhere, and usually you go to a company like yours and steal it.
So the guy came in and said, "Well, you were signed out for 6 Jeeps, and you only got 5.
You better go steal a Jeep.
You better go steal a Jeep."
Yeah.
Okay. And just change the letters on the bumper. Okay. So that's one IG. Okay. They were right in the middle. That's not a good time to get back because things got to go crazy when doing.
Well, it was, but it was good for us because what they did is it usually took you 24 hours to muster out of the Army. Yeah. It only took us like 13. You didn't sleep at all. What you did is you went from one station to another station. The stations were dental, eyes, your stateside uniform, personnel file, make sure everything's up to date, your shot record, make sure that was all up to date. And what they would do is you got a homecoming steak. They would make you a steak, a nice big steak, and that was your homecoming steak the Army would give you. Well, it usually takes you 24 hours to muster out, like I said, and what you could do is you could cop like 3 or 4 hours of sleep in between mustering out stations. But we didn't have that luxury. So I had a cousin that lived in San Jose, and I went to see her, and at the time I got to her apartment, I was going on about almost 40 hours of no sleep.
All right, let me ask you this question. It's and maybe it's different when you came home, because I was there in 67, 68. You were there in the early 70s. Guys who went out and had their little thing with the girls. They always told us about this stuff called the black syphilis, and you were afraid to get. All the rumors were they sent you off to an island somewhere to die, but there was no cure for it whatsoever. Did you get that same?
Yeah, I got the same rumor.
Okay.
I knew nobody that had it. I mean, I knew guys that had venereal disease, but it was all curable. But in my case, I've got to be honest about this. In my case, I didn't mess with the women. I really did.
Not me either, but I was always interested in finding somebody that knew somebody. It's kind of like fragging.
Yeah.
Where you throw a grenade into an officer gives you a hard time, so one night you kind of put a grenade in his hooch and so forth.
Again, that's another story. I've never heard of anybody actually get fragged, and or somebody that was there when they were fragged or something like that. I heard stories about it, but I never actually ran into somebody that was actually there that did it.
Well, I remember before we left Vietnam, we had to take a blood test and so forth. And even though I had nothing to do with girls, I was still scared to death that I was going to fail that, somehow or another going to fail that blood test, and they were going to keep me for a little bit longer. Right?
Well, everything must have changed quite a bit in the 2 years, because we didn't take any blood tests.
I didn't? Okay.
No, they made sure we had no equipment that we were taking home, which I kind of screwed up. I wanted to take my flight suit home, because I did air recon too, and I wanted to take my K-bar knife. I wanted to take that. But I chickened out when they said they were going to check my equipment, and they never checked any of my stuff.
Well, you know, Vietnam vets coming back, they were crazy. They couldn't let you have anything as dangerous as a K-bar knife or whatever, because you were dangerous to yourself and society and so forth. All right, now you're back. You're a civilian now.
Yep.
What do you do as a civilian? You just went out. You just spent a year in this place called in Vietnam, and through some pretty harsh conditions and so forth. And tell me a little bit about getting back to normal life, if there is such a thing.
Well, I had my first experience on my plane ride home. I got on a TWA jet, which it's not even in existence anymore. TWA isn't. And I got on a jet. I sat down. Now here's a guy with a very short haircut. And, I mean, it had to be real short if you look at my head now. But it was a fairly short haircut and a deep, 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 dark tan. I mean, I was really tanned. And I got on the airplane and sat down, and the stewardess came up to me and she says, "Well, hi, soldier." And I says, "Hi," because I was in uniform. And I says, "Hi." She says, "Where are you going?" I says, "I'm going home." "Well, where's home?" I says, "Pennsylvania." "Oh, yeah. Well, where'd you come from?" I said, "I just came back from Vietnam." She shook her head and says, "Why don't you go back to Vietnam? Because we don't want baby killers or that back here in the United States." And did not serve me the whole flight. Well, the flight was to Pittsburgh, and she did not serve me on that flight.
This is from California.
This is from California. So that was my first experience of going home. We got the brunt of President Nixon. I got home. Coming from a small town, it wasn't bad, but we were very close to Allentown, and Allentown had some protests, and we caught a little bit of it, but not too much. Coming home, I'm not doing nothing for 30 days. I mean, don't ask me to do nothing for 30 days. I've got a pocket full of money. I mean, I left Oakland with probably about $800 with back pay and mustering out pay, back pay, and R&R pay, and I mean all kinds of stuff. Leave pay. So I had about $800 in my pocket,
which was a lot of money.
Oh, that was a ton of money in 1970. That was a ton of money, 71. So I did nothing. But there was a guy right down the street from me who was with the 25th Division. He was a corpsman with the 25th. And when he got home, when he got to Oakland, he still had blood on his uniform from his last firefight. So him and I buddied up, and we'd go out, we'd sleep all day, and then about 7 o'clock at night, we'd go out and drinking and eating pizza and telling war stories. And when the sun come up, we went home and go back to bed and sleep all day and get up when the sun went down. And so you did nothing for 30 days. And finally my mom said to me, she said, "You ever think about getting a job maybe?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I went out looking for a job.
Yeah, from what I remember, you ended up going back to college. You ended up going to college.
I went to Oklahoma. I went out with my brother in Oklahoma, who lived in Oklahoma. He was working, and I lived with him and went to college out there.
So you were how old at this time?
20. I just turned 21.
21. So you were about the same age as the college students. They were probably 20, 21 years old.
Right.
How'd you end you had been through a whole lot more than they had and so forth. They were probably doing panty raids while you were on Cambodian raids and so forth.
I didn't like college at all, to tell you the truth. I didn't like college. College to me, I was 20, 21 years old, but I had a 40-year-old mind. And I thought that they were all kids at college. So I couldn't relate to them. And plus, when they found out I was a Vietnam veteran, our cafeteria had four-person seats, 4 tables, 4-person tables. And the kids were waiting along the wall to find a seat would open up and everything, especially at lunchtime and dinner time. And I'd be sitting by myself. Nobody would sit with me. I had what they call the million-mile stare. Yeah. That's what a combat troop will get, a million-mile stare, is that your eyes are like shark eyes or doll's eyes that are looking through you. And that's what my eyes were like. I would look through a person, and that scared the hell out of a lot of kids. Scared them really bad.
Well, I got one more question for you. I know you've been back to, we went back to Vietnam. You've been back 2 times. Well, let's talk about the first time you went back, and what made you want to go back, and how did you feel when that plane landed at well, it didn't land at Benoit this time. It landed at Tan Son Nhut in Saigon.
I was apprehensive. I was a little apprehensive. I didn't know whether the Vietnamese people would accept us coming back. Did they hold grudges against the Americans? Did somebody know that I wiped out her uncle or something? I don't know. I had bad feelings about it, apprehension about it. And then once we landed, I didn't smell diesel all of a sudden. That was strange. And it was totally different. And it was once we got there, it was very pleasant. It was a great trip. And that's one reason I went back, is to see what they did with the country. Mm-hmm. And the second reason, I needed to bury a couple ghosts. And I buried them. I felt a lot better for it.
Yeah, I remember we spent a couple of nights with former VC, and that was somewhat of an experience. But then you started talking to him and realized that on his own way, he'd gone through some of the same stuff that you had gone through, and especially when he pulled up his shirt or his pajamas, as he always in, he showed us where he'd been shot by a helicopter.
Yeah. And Dave had that look on his face.
And then we just came back from over in Dong Ha. And the only reason you go to Dong Ha is because you're either building a playground for kids like we did, or you're going someplace else.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about. We're running out of time, but we'll have to go into Dong Ha trip a little bit later. But thank you for being with us for this show, and we'll get you back to finish some of the stories that you can get a chance to do.
Well, I thank you, Bill, and I thank our brethren here for having us do this. It's a real pleasure to come down here and talk about it, so people could actually learn from a living person that was in Vietnam, and what you're doing for our group and our country is fantastic, and I thank you.
Well, I hope that people will get to see it live, but also that it's a great tool for students to come back later and go into the archives. I think what Amnon is doing by letting us do this show and furnish the facilities and so forth, it's so far-reaching. For 5-10 years from now, our kids can look, or grandkids can look at this, look back at some of the shows and go, "Gee, Granddaddy never talked much about that," or "Dad never talked much about that."
That's true. The history books don't tell you anything.
Yeah. But our next show will be August 13th, between 8 and 9. So tune in again, 8 and 9. We'll have a new guest. And put this number down, 919-518-9773. Write it down right now on a piece of paper and save it so that next show you can call in like our other caller is and ask us some questions. Thank you and good evening.
Tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, and if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals. ThatVidBlasterGuy.com, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.